speaker tonight. He also happens to be a new board member with us, and he's already been a huge help to the society. So without further ado, I'm Barbara Udit, the president of the Gulf Breeze Area Historical Society, and we're so glad you came tonight. And I'd like to ask Becky Herzog. Becky's our secretary. She's going to come up and introduce our speaker for this evening.
All right, I'm filling in for Teresa Van Pelt, who's not here tonight. The speaker this evening is Jerry Smith. He's a board member now of the Gulf Breeze Area Historical Society, and we're very excited to have him. This presentation is part of a series entitled A National Heritage Area Designation is Essential for the Florida Panhandle. Jerry is a native of Pensacola, Florida, and a graduate of UWF with a Bachelor's of Arts degree in history. He was a founding member of the Chipley Historical Society, Pine Mountain, Georgia, where he worked with a team of citizens to preserve the original City Hall and add it to the National Registry of Historical Places. He assisted in the creation of the Chipley Historical Center to preserve documents, pictures, and artifacts while helping it become a center for genealogy research. For the past year, he has been a volunteer from the Gulf Breeze Area Historical Society supporting the Askew Institute of Multidisciplinary Studies of UWF and the Florida Public Archaeology Network to acquire the designation of Florida Panhandle Maritime National Heritage Area. Welcome, Jerry Smith.
I told Vicki I use both hands usually in talking, so it may be difficult with one tied down, but I'll definitely do my best. Two birds circled as a husband during the 18th century watched one of the doves land on his wife's shoulder. She was pinning clothes up to the clothesline. They kind of laughed as she reached to stroke one of the doves. Then they flew away. Came as quickly as they arrived. A week later, the two white doves were seen again. This time they were on the sill of a window in the bedroom that was open as she lay there dying. The coroner came and commented on how beautiful these doves were. She reached to stroke the doves. They flew, never to be seen by anyone in that area ever again. The great-grandmother has a proverb, "We will do something even if it's wrong." Her granddaughter repeated it even into her 90s as she slowly went into the thoughtless area of dementia. A lot of young people thought that it had no meaning whatsoever, thought it was very negative, but in reality it was a universal truth. Then there's the one story that's just too informative for a teenager asking his grandmother about the olden days. She laughed when she told the story about herself and his grandfather when they were trying to hide from a woman crossing over the Pine Barren Creek Bridge just before they were married. They both were skinny dipping. Everyone in this room has enjoyed hearing a family legend, some private, others not so. The Florida Panhandle holds family tales of hurricanes, murders, strange happenings, funny events, front porch rocking chair political discussions, and Brer Rabbit stories. There are also untold Florida Panhandle narratives of generals, ships captains, global power struggles, sunken ships, rivers full of prehistoric treasures, first happenings, unrecognized human contributions, and endless determinations. Good evening. My name is Jerry Smith, and it's my privilege to stand before you this evening because tonight I have the responsibility to inform you about the National Heritage Area, to give you an understanding of this area. I'll be talking about the program itself, its benefits, and 3 unique things about the Florida Panhandle, making it suitable as a National Heritage Area. The National Heritage Area program was designated by Congress in 1984, and each National Heritage Area has a federal law that has to bring it into power, bring it into existence. The program was created to brand an area as a national, with a national title, to recognize it of its national importance. When the first National Heritage Area was dedicated in 1984, President Reagan called it a new kind of national park that married heritage, conservation, recreation, economic development. And that still holds true today. Today, there are 49 heritage areas administered by the National Park Service. The National Park Service partners with local organizations to provide technical assistance, and they also will dispatch federal funds back to those entities within each of those areas. The National Park Service doesn't own any of the property within those areas, nor does it dictate how that property can be used. The University of West Florida and the Askew Institute of Multidisciplinary Studies and the Florida Public Archaeology Network are taking the lead to build, support, and present a proposal to the National Park Service and to Congress. They are looking at a proposal for the 50th National Heritage Area that will be located here in the Panhandle of Florida. It will consist of 14 counties that will stretch from the Perdita River 230 miles to the east to the Waukulla County, St. Mark's River. 230 miles. Within that area, there are a little over 1 million people. But for 14 counties, that's not a big area. That's not a lot of people. And it's, look at Dade County. Dade County alone, which is quite considerably a metropolitan area, makes this area about half that size. Same with Orlando, about half. This area is half the size of those 2 counties separately. So what is the National Park Service and Congress looking for in a national park area, a national heritage area? They will look at, they will be looking for a grassroots community-driven approach to heritage conservation and economic development. They must see citizens and organizations support for those historic preservation, natural resource conservation, recreation, heritage tourism, and have educational projects already in that area. They will also look at letters of support. The Gulf Breeze Area Historical Society has already provided a letter of support saying, hey, this is a good thing. We want it to be a part of it, and we want it in our community. And that's why the board members saw fit to say, hey, we're going to have one dedicated person from our organization to work to make sure that everybody in our area hears about this as we progress and as it grows. One of the questions I was thinking the other day that may be asked by the National Park Service, and this is strange, they may ask, well, what makes the Florida Panhandle so different when 120 miles away you have a Mississippi 5-county area that is called the Mississippi Gulf Heritage Area? So what is your difference if they're only 120 miles away? And those are some of the things that we need to think about as we go forward in promoting this particular area. The Florida Panhandle has a story to tell, and it's time it be told. What are some of the benefits? Well, the Florida Panhandle has a story to tell, and it's time it be told, but also there are national benefits to having a branded area. As you would in any business, having a branded area, having a branded company, and having a good brand is important because it's going to generate economic development, same as it will for a historical area. It will create jobs. It would encourage historic preservation, conservation of natural resources, improved recognition so that it differentiates itself from the competition, 120-mile-away competition. The support advertising and social media, promotes tourism, and also for the organizations within that area, it provides motivation and direction. The strength of a heritage area lies on its grassroots foundation. The Panhandle of Florida has had scattered people and organizations interested in preserving and conserving natural resources for decades, but there have been a lot of losses during that period of time. During the last 50 years, we've seen a lot of growth to improve this grassroots foundation, and I think that it has some interesting items that we ought to look at to see what has happened over the last 50 years that has added to this grassroots foundation that we have in the Panhandle. In the 1960s and 70s, a greater involvement with the university historic writing and research in the Panhandle was seen by the creation of the junior college system. Also became the University of West Florida. When those junior colleges became four-year institutions, then we saw additional writing, investigation, additional research in the area. Today, I would say that the Panhandle has a significant factor from these colleges as far as making it a very important point for a national heritage area. They add a lot of support, just like the research that's being done here in the Bay every day that we see. That's all the way across the Panhandle that's being done. The decision of the 60s and the 70s are addressed by Allison Twells in a Making History resource article entitled Community History. In it, she states that a growing practice of writing and research in the 60s and 70s outside of the university setting was observed growing out of local historical societies. Local history writing was not always seen as on par with the universities because of their highly trained background in that area. But come to find out that most of the citizens in the community enjoyed reading that writing more than they did that from the university. At the same time, oral history became part of that particular history phase, and it still is in effect today. Many of us, well, maybe some of us here in the room, will remember these practices continuing to grow in the 1990s. With the introduction of home computers allowed local historical societies and individuals to research on the internet. Genealogy research expanded out from the Mormon church family via the websites like Ancestry.com in 1997. These sites allowed access to government and family records. The introduction in 2001 of Wikipedia permitted anyone access to general reference material via the internet. And I would say everyone in this room has definitely used Wikipedia at some point or the other. Actually, I used it probably within the last hour. In 2005, Google Maps and YouTube were released. In 2006, Facebook went from the university environment to allow anyone with an internet address to use their services. All of these tools became available to individuals, became available to museums and historical societies across the Panhandle. In 2006, the North Okaloosa Historical Society began to bring the Panhandle Historical Preservation Alliance into fruition. It created a strong foundation for the National Heritage Area, and today there are 60 organizations and 45 cities supporting this particular alliance. Other facets we found have been the continued military facility support, conservation alliances, state and national forests, national seashore, well-established airports, and a very good highway system allowing access to historic sites and conservation areas. All of these have added to our foundation. As part of a foundation, we also have to look at the belief of that foundation. And what's the important aspect of this belief? Key feature is that all history should be recognized. All history should be recognized. Everyone in this community has contributed to what this area has become. Nothing should be lost. The history of the common man, woman, regardless of social, political background, culture, religion, or racial makeup, should be shown as part of the genealogy for what our area is today. We have a strong grassroots foundation, and this belief will only make it stronger. So, 3 unique things of the Florida Panhandle, making it suitable for a national heritage area. During the preparation of the speech, I imagined myself standing in front of Congress or the National Park Service and trying to figure out, well, what would be the first question they would ask me and how would I respond? So I looked and I said, well, maybe the first thing we should look at is something that gives them assurance and conveys to Congress that they picked the right place. Best choice is here. So here are 3 items I consider that must be first on the list before we add any other unique features that I may be asking you all to submit a little bit later. So those characteristics are the Florida Panhandle has a strong foundation to support a national heritage area. We've gone through that. We agree. Yes, it does. And 2 and 3, the Florida Panhandle has a story to tell, and it's time it be told. The time is right for the details to support a national heritage area are in place. The work could not have been done 20 or even 10 years ago. The work, even 5 years ago, I would have my doubts that we could put into play what we want to do right now. We now know, and this has just been released recently, we now know how important our area is as a hotspot for biological riches. A foundation of historic interest and national resource conservation is now in place, along with the added historical details of archaeological discoveries that continue from day to day, along with expert alliances. So some of you may be thinking that these attributes that I mentioned may be a little short. You were looking for something more of attributes from Florida to say, well, what else do you have, mister? So I went to some of my friends and I asked them, give me 3 things that you think would benefit us and show that this area is unique. These are the responses. Dr. Sorner Katzek, the cradle of innovation. Forgotten history of America. Resilient people and builders of America. Pam Schwartz, school teacher, and this sounds just right, I love it. 3 P's. Place on the Gulf of Mexico. People who have participated historically. Protection throughout the military history. Barbara Albrecht. Our region is blessed with many rivers that begin in southern. Now, I'm going to tell you this lady is a German lady, has excellent, her vocabulary is better than mine, and she writes far better than I do. So every time I read something from her, I totally get lost in reading it because it always sounds so nice. Our region is blessed with many rivers that begin in southern Alabama and end in large northwest Florida estuaries. These estuaries are the mixing place where Gulf waters enter during daily tidal regimes and mix with fresh waters which flow from upland areas carrying mixtures of organic material, minerals, and nutrients. These ingredients are the magic that sustained aquatic life and attracted early visitors and Native Americans to our coastal areas. No 2 estuaries are the same. No two rivers have the same river chemistry. No two bayous support the same species. And that is the magic we must preserve for our future generations. Jamin Wells, many of you know. I remain amazed at the profound role played by the federal government in shaping the region's physical, social, economic, and cultural landscape over the last 200 years. Lucy Duncan, Old Family and Gulf Breeze. She adds three: nature, navigation, and renewal. Nature. It's easy for those of us in the urbanized, over-commercialized coastal western panhandle to forget about the vast fishery nurseries, both here, Escambia and Blackwater Bays, and east of here. The marshes and bayous, the deltas of Northwest Florida, and the three magnificent rivers, Waukulla, St. Marks, and the Aquila, are the breeding grounds for the seafood industry and recreational fishing. Without them, there would be no seafood industry, and much of the recreational fishing would be lost. We have great stretches of open beaches thanks to the National Seashore, Eglin, Tyndall Air Force Base, as well as inland tracks to protect forests, Blackwater, Eglin, Apalachicola. Navigation. Historically, our deep water ports that are so close to the Gulf of Mexico are the basis for development here. Renewal. Throughout the northern Gulf Coast, we are seeing renewal and revitalization of older downtown areas that update without losing the charm or the historical significance. We cannot forget the renewal that is yet to become by storm-stricken areas. Communities who are striving to rebuild lives and livelihood. This is a fact of living where we live. Destructive hurricanes that will always provide wonderful opportunities to renew. And most communities are realizing the importance of public access to shoreline while recognize the need to build wisely with sea level rise and climate changes on the horizon. So shorelines are being renewed as well. Jeff Perkins, the life of Manuel Gonzalez, early 1800s, and his relationship with Andrew Jackson. Manuel Gonzalez, Florida, Cantonment area. Don Tristan de Luna expedition in 1559 in Pensacola. The struggle for Pensacola between Spain, France, England, Confederates, and the United States. Gerald W. Smith, naval stores and deerskins. At Queen's War, maritime transport. These are the items that we're looking for as for suggestions. The uniqueness of the Panhandle of Florida. So in quick summary, we've gone through quite a lot, and we've seen that each National Heritage Area is a grassroots, community-driven approach to heritage conservation and natural resource conservation. National Heritage Areas are created by individual law, administered by the National Park Service, who provide funding and technical assistance.